Right.
We just kind of wanted to be safe for everybody over there, and y'all chill.
Yes.
Which, and I agree with that.
Absolutely. But only way to get rid of Hamas is to take it. You know, because the people have no power over there. You know,
I thought they were pretty well whipped. Maybe not.
well, they're still in control in the government and all that kind of stuff, and so that's the big problem is the the Hamas government has they control the people
Hamas is just Iranians, right?
mostly. Yes, Iran funds Hamas and Hezbollah and that kind of stuff, but it's a lot of Palestinians that have succumbed to that. But there's many Palestinians in Gaza that don't, but they have no power. They have no control over getting rid of them. So it would take Israel or us or somebody to come in there and get rid of them.
I saw Israel or us. I don't know, but dropping food
Yes,
over there, supplies, and people were jumping on it.
yes.
So if it's still under control of their enemy, yeah,
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yes. Yeah. Those people, there's different organizations that are bringing food in, but as soon as they drop it off, what happens? Hamas, takes it for a big part. Now there's some American group that Hamas doesn't mess with. That ex-military guys, they're running that food drop and all that stuff, and they don't mess with them because those guys will shoot them. I mean, they're getting it there for the people to have, but it's limited. They can't reach all those people, and it's a sad situation because those people they don't. You would think, well, they could just move, but they don't have any wherewithal, to get out. I mean, they're poor people, and Hamas has brought them so far down that they don't have anything. They don't have any hope. They don't have nothing. And when Hamas uses them as bargaining chips and as shields, that tells you what kind of people they are. They don't care about the people. They don't care if those people starve to death. The world does, and Hamas uses that to drum up support from the world, and they'll allow those people to die by hunger because it makes Israel look bad. But again, this is not nothing new. I mean, uh, Satan's been trying to make Israel look bad, for thousands of years here and stuff. So that's nothing new. But it's just sad that that's what it takes, though. That's what it would take to get rid of them. Now, Israel certainly inflicted a lot of pain into Hamas, but as long as Iran is still funding it, then that's where a big problem lies too.
pretty well took care of Iran.
Um, Not to the point where it should have been. Yeah,
We always stop short. Always.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, since Vietnam
yeah. Well, absolutely.
or Korea.
Yeah, and you can make an argument for Korea for sure. Last time really was when we dropped them two bombs on Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That was the last time the U.S. really extended something, because Japan would have never stopped. They would have never stopped, and our military knew that, and they didn't want to send another 300,000, 500,000 men over there to fight a battle when they knew Japan would never stop. But that stopped them. But you have to break a spirit. It has to get to a place like that. Um, so, as the devastation that was, there's no telling how many millions of lives was saved because of those two bombs that were dropped. And it just, it killed it right there. I mean, it ended it. It ended the Japanese influence, in World War II. It ended it because they were broken. So, but, again, you're right, not going far that next step. President Bush didn't with Afghanistan, and all that stuff that happened. It didn't with Vietnam for sure. I mean, that was a joke, you know. I mean, that was should never. We, you know, hindsight's 20/20 though when you look back. But again, trying to fight a war like that with with technology we had, that's just crazy. No way it should have ever been done. So, but evil's pretty persistent. And that's what that is. Hamas are evil. That's all there is about it. I mean, just flat up. So, good question. Anything else? Next Sunday, I would like to ask permission to go to Harmony next Sunday night to present the work in Kenya, my trip in Kenya. Harmony blessed me with a love offering to help me go over there this time, and so I would like that opportunity if that's okay with everyone. And so we may just dismiss next Sunday evening, if that's all right. I hate dismissing service, but seems like a lot of folks dismiss, and so already. But all right, Joshua chapter 3. Last time we looked at the two spies, went over there. We know the story of Rahab. We talked about all that. They come back, said, the Lord has given this to us. Lord has given us this land. And so in chapter 3, verse 1, and Joshua rose early in the morning, and they removed from Shittim and came to Jordan, he and all the children of Israel, and lodged there before they passed over. Wasted no time. They got busy doing it, got busy in it. And that first map, the Google map one, Regina, I want to show you guys this a little bit. Let's go. No, can you remove this right here? Okay, good deal. This right here is the Jordan River. All right, this is Jericho right here. This is a modern day map. Wasn't quite that big back then, but this is modern day Jericho. And this is the Jordan coming down. And, well, I'm about to fall off again. But over there is actually Shittim, where ancient Shittim would be. And so what happens now, Joshua's got these guys over here. Remember, Moses is dead. They did the 30 days of mourning. I think it's happening pretty fast. Send the spies, 3-day spies come back and say, let's take it. Joshua said, next morning, let's go. Let's get everything ready. It's going to take them 3 days, really, there's some things they've got to do. And so in chapter 1, we saw 3 days. And here we're going to see 3 days. And I think this 3 days is for them to move this 1 million, 2 million people, however many it is, to get to this place, because they're going to cross the Jordan. Now, where they cross it is a great debate. And we'll talk more about that as we go. But this right here is the quote-unquote baptismal site of Jesus. There's one in Jordan over here that the Jordanians have claimed because they would like to do that. But again, this is Jordan on this side of the Jordan River. This is the country of Jordan, and then this is Israel over here. And so, but this site right here, this is where Christians have, during Jesus' time, that's where those early believers set this up. That's where Jesus was baptized. This is where John the Baptist was baptizing in the Jordan. And so, now, did the children of Israel cross in this spot? Man, that's a great question. And we don't know for sure. But wouldn't it be cool if it was? Be pretty neat. Now, there's been crossings of the Jordan by Elijah crossed, Elisha came back, we've seen these crossings before, but what did it all around this area? Well, we don't know. All right, we don't know for sure. But if it is here, another map here in a minute, if we get to it tonight, I'll show you, gives us an idea of what it looked like a little bit. Again, this is modern day Jericho. Regina, would you scroll out just a little bit? And I want to show this area over here. No, go the other way. Make it farther away. No, other way. Those spies went into the mountains. Remember they hid in the mountains? That's what all this right here is. This is that mountain range west of Jericho. And so some people say, why would they have went that way whenever all the people was over there? Well, why not? Rahab told them that they went toward Jordan. So, of course, they would have went the other way, for those 3 days of protection. And these over here, full of caves and all easy to hide. I mean, it would have been no problem. And so I just want to show you all that, too, around Jericho there. Again, Jericho wasn't quite that big back then, but it was still a pretty good-sized city, one of the oldest cities, in the ancient world. And so when we look at the Jordan, again, Jordan's coming down out of the Sea of Galilee right through here, and there's something special about it right now this time of year, and we'll study that too, is that it was overflowing out of its banks. And we'll talk about that more when we get there.
Okay, that just to the left of Jordan before you get to Israel is now the Gaza Strip, right in there?
No, sir. Gaza is Philistine area. Gaza's on the Mediterranean. Scroll all the way out, Regina. Scroll all the way out. Show me all of Israel. Yeah. See, here's Ashdod and Ascalon and then Gaza down here. Gaza's on the Mediterranean. All of this was Philistine land. And so this is the Gaza Strip right here. This little skinny area. Here's Rafah. This is one of the main areas that Israel's hit and pretty much wiped it out. This area down here is where that military group is set up, where they're feeding the people down in here. But they have struck different areas all through Gaza. Israel has, where they were strong, Hamas strongholds, and where leadership was and stuff. And they killed a good number of the Hamas leadership that was in Gaza, but they'll just ship more in from Iran, and just like that. So, but this is this area here. Again, this is Egypt, here, and then all this is Israel right here. That's where Gaza is. But Jericho is on this side. Jericho, this is the West Bank right now, and so Jericho is actually closer to that region right now. By the way, Vice President Vance said we're not going to call it the West Bank anymore. They're going to start calling it Assyria, like it used to be called. Like now we have the Gulf of America, now. They're not going to call it West Bank anymore. But this right here is all of the West Bank from Jerusalem up on this side, and the West Bank is mix of Jewish and Muslim, Jewish and Arab people, Palestinians and Jews all live in that region. So, but again, Jericho will be right here. And since we scroll back out, many think Shittim is right around in here between the two mountain ranges. So it would have taken time for all the people to get closer to the Jordan to get ready. So that's why we see these 3 days. Plus there was something else in these 3 days they got to take care of too. So.
Did y'all see the Dead Sea when you were over there?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Did people actually float?
Yes, you do. Yeah, I did. Regina and I both did. Yeah. Yeah, we traveled all the way down to about right here in this area right here is where we stayed one night, and then we went on further on down. But yes, ma'am, we sure did. Went to Engedi, stopped. It was in this area right in here is where we spent the night.
Is that where the
Now,
Dead Sea Scrolls was?
yes, ma'am. Yes, absolutely. Now, if you scroll down a little bit forward, we stopped in Engedi. I'm sorry, we stopped there, but we stayed down here in the flats. This is where all of this used to be more of the Dead Sea area. All of it was. But what happens over time is Israel, hey guys, come on in. Israel has harvested the Dead Sea for the salt. And they sell it all over the world. And so what we have now, see how these little areas down here, these are salt farms, so to speak. Not the right word, but it helps us understand it the way they'll harvest it. And so what have they done is they've shrunk the water so much that there's not as near as much water flowing through it like there used to be. And plus the Jordan, they grab so much water out of the Jordan after it comes out of the Sea of Galilee. They grab it because there's all kinds of irrigation now. There's all kinds of farming in there. And so there's not as much volume of water coming down through the Jordan as it used to be to replenish the Dead Sea as well. So the Dead Sea is actually dying. You might see reports on the internet or whatever. You can search it. What, ma'am?
Well, if they quit harvesting so they don't fill the whole seed.
Oh, that's money. Anybody stopping making money? I mean, they were selling it right here in this hotel we were at. I mean, you could. I brought some back. Are we online? Okay, I didn't say it very loud. But anyway, I got some at the house. So, but yeah, this is what this is here, and so it's still salt water that you can float in. But we didn't go in Engedi or up here in that bigger area. Plus, the map is really kind of, it doesn't really show a lot of that like it is now too. But yes, ma'am, you will float in it. Absolutely. And it's really hard to maneuver in it. It's so thick. It's like swimming in jello. But yeah, got out in it. So anyway, good question. Anybody else? But you see how brown and tan it is on the map, how tan and stuff? Yeah, it looks just like that over there. Looks just like at Panlin. Anyway, I just had to bring that up again. Very sand, very mountainous, very, what you see, when you see green, like on a current map, we can blow it up along the Jordan River and you'll see spots of green. That's either an existing spring. What was the name? I just went blank. Anyway, it's either an existing spring like that or they irrigate it. And there's all kinds of crops that are grown along the Jordan, on the Israeli side and on the Jordan side too. They squabble over that some. You see a lot of razor wire in there, lots of multiple layers of fencing in there because they want people, coming over. They have, the guys were telling me and us on the tour that all that area is monitored, live monitoring, and so they know within about just a foot when somebody crosses the technology that they have on it. So I mean, there's cameras there monitoring all that kind of stuff. They know when somebody jumps the fence, so to speak. So, but it's pretty neat. Anyway, anybody else? All right. So, pull up this second map. It kind of shows, this is, okay. This is BibleMapper.com. This is just somebody's idea of where it took place. And so, up above the Dead Sea, this is Edom and Moab down here in the bottom, but scroll up there a little bit there, Regina, please. And so, this right here is where they speculate the camp may have been, in this region right here. And this is Abel Shittim. This is a modern type name for that area, but it may have not have been in that area. But see, they had some ground to cover before they get here. They would have crossed right here in line with Jericho. I mean, they were going to cross. Plus, that's Jesus' baptismal site. And whenever they're here, Mount Nebo's right in this area too. You can see, because there ain't nothing blocking your view. You can see easy. Because it's flat. And there's nothing blocking the view from that side, from any of this area over here. All of this, you can see, you can just see. Because there ain't nothing blocking it till you get to this mountain range right here. That mountain range right there, you can see it. Now, when we was on Nebo, you could see over this. And I think Moses, whenever he saw, I think he could see the Mediterranean when he saw it. I firmly believe it. Nobody will ever convince me any different, because it don't say no different in Scripture. But God told Moses you'd be able to see it all. And Moses saw it all. He saw all the land. And I can see how he could. Back before smog and, and pollution and stuff like that. I believe it. We could see. I could see the Sea of Galilee from Mount Nebo. That was crazy. But there ain't nothing to stop the sight, man. It's just nothing there. So, anyway. So, that's where one guy speculated that they've come from Shittim and they're headed to the Jordan. And in verse 2 it says, "And it came to pass after 3 days that the officers went through the host." It was going to take them 3 days to get there. After 3 days, we don't want to get caught up too much in the timing per se. Maybe during the 3 days they knew what was coming, and so maybe after 3 days they were going to get there or whatever. But it says the officers went through there to tell the people what they were going to do. And they commanded the people, saying, when ye see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and the priests the Levites bearing it, then ye shall remove from your place and go after it. What did they follow in the wilderness before this time? What did they follow? Follow the cloud, right? Pillar of fire by night, cloud by day. That's what they followed. Now they camped around the ark, didn't they? Once Moses built the ark was in the middle, along with the tabernacle. The ark was in the most holy place in the tabernacle. Everybody camped around it, right? 4 sides, 3 on each side. So there would be 3 groups, and the Bible talks about which group, where they were, and all that kind of stuff. And so here now, when you see the ark, question, has God's cloud, is it gone now? Now that, you can't do that regular. Okay, I didn't just time that. Was the cloud gone by this time?
I would think so.
I kind of feel that way too. Yes.
The cloud would have left.
Right. So see, now we're changing it to follow the ark. What happens with this, though, it just give you a little bit of information. You know, years later, they kept wanting to follow the ark instead of following God.
How did they know where to? How did they know where to take the ark?
Well, God was going to lead them. God's leading them across Jordan. God's going to lead them to Jericho. God's already told them that's where it's going to be. But they got to a place, though, kind of like the Pharisees did in Jesus' time. They started worshiping the ark. They started following the ark. They thought God was in the ark. It did. And so when the Philistines captured it, the Philistines thought they had something. We got God here in a box. But they found out real quick, man, we got to get rid of this thing. And so, but they started worshiping and following the ark. And it started right here. But it wasn't designed by God to do that, but that's the way they took it. So how many things has God designed that we've taken and we've made gods out of it, even though it is of God? So anyway, so here we go. And they're going to follow it. And so as soon as they see it, some people say, well, how could they have seen the ark? This place is flatter than flat. West Texas flat, brother. I mean, they could see it. Ain't no problem. For us here in East Texas, we can't see 100 yards because of trees and stuff. But there, Level Land, Texas, you can see. And this is that place there. They could see it. No problem seeing it. So when you see the ark move, when they bear it up, everything got to be packed. Remember, they had tents. They lived in tents. They were nomadic people. For 40 years, they've been nomadic. So they didn't have any permanent structures. Even the tabernacle was not a permanent structure, right? They moved it. Moved it, set it up, moved it, set it up, that. So everything they had was nomadic. And so they would be ready. No problem for them to pack and be ready to go, just like that. And so when they saw the ark, they would get after it. And here we go. Okay. Simple instruction, right? Was there any question about what they should do? Should not have been any question, right? We're going to follow the ark. And so, in verse 4, yet there shall be a space between you and it about 2,000 cubits by measure. 2,000 cubits, 3,000 feet, 1,000 yards roughly. So a little over half a mile. That was as close as they could get to it. But they could see it with no problem. They could see further than that. I mean, they could see Jericho. No problem. And so there was no problem for 1.5 million, however many people, to follow it. No problem. Come not near unto it, that ye may know the way by which ye must go, for ye have not passed this way heretofore. Uncharted territory. Now, much of their wandering in the wilderness was uncharted too. But remember, Moses knew a big area of that in his 40 years in the wilderness. So he knew a lot of that area, but they had went ways where they didn't know before. But here specifically, this is new. And if you go on a new way, you need to have a leader. Who's their leader? God's their leader. Through Joshua is going to lead them. Okay? And so, hey, they need to know. They need to know this is a new way. And by the way, lots of new things fixing to be happening. Lots of things they hadn't seen before. God's going to make himself known in different ways. You see, I think they had gotten used to God. With the manna, with the water, they had become to expect what God could do in these ways. I wonder how many of them thought, well, God couldn't do anything outside of these ways. Sometimes we get that way too. God couldn't do anything outside of what I've seen him do before, because we get used to seeing what God can do. But can God do great things outside of what we think he can do? I tell people this all the time. I don't ever put God in a box. Can't limit him. God has limited himself on what he can and will do, but we can't limit him. Pretty neat, though. Verse 5, and Joshua said unto the people, sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. Sanctify yourselves. What does that mean, to sanctify themselves? Set apart. Absolutely. The word in the Hebrew is kadosh, which means to be clean, to consecrate, to set apart. Okay? Joshua told them to sanctify themselves, to set themselves apart, to be clean before they take this next step. To be hallowed, to be purified, to be sanctified, to be this process of this cleansing, because they're doing something new. Here we go. And so that was important. In Exodus chapter 19, we see Moses called for a cleansing as well. Moses called for the people to cleanse themselves. And Joshua here is calling by God for cleansing, because they were going to do something new. They were going to do a new thing, something that they had not been doing for these past 40 years, something that was new. You know, and God does that with us too when he has a new work for us to do, a new time. He wants us to understand that. And there may be a ceremonial type cleansing that we need to do. And so that's what that was about. So they washed themselves. They put on their best clothes, and they got ready. And they got ready. And it's just that simple. And in verse 6, it says that Joshua spake unto the priest, saying, take up the ark of the covenant, and pass over before the people. And they took up the ark of the covenant, and went before the people. Very simple. And the Lord said unto Joshua, this day will I begin to magnify thee in the sight of all Israel. God said he was going to magnify Joshua in sight of all Israel. Why would that be important?
The people had to know that God had chosen Joshua.
Yes.
Otherwise, it would be like they did with Moses. They would rebel and say, man, we don't think so. We want this guy.
Right. Absolutely. God needed to set Joshua up as the interface, right? As the intermediary, as a type of Christ, right? To be this one that was going to be the spokesman for God, so to speak, right? And to be the leader of the people. And so that was important to magnify him, magnify Joshua, not the man Joshua, but the work that he was to do, to make sure the people had a leader to look to. He got to a place where some of those guys were worshiping Moses, though, instead of worshiping God. And that was something that God, I'm sure, was going to take care of here too, that they would not worship Joshua, that they would worship God. But God's going to use Joshua in a mighty way. But it was important that they had a leader, that they made known of that. Now, God had already told Joshua, as we were studying chapter 1, verse 5, there shall not a man be able to stand before thee all the days of thy life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. I will not fail thee nor forsake thee. So we know that God's already told Joshua that, but now the people have got to know it. The people said, God has set him up, and we need to honor him. And that's important. Now, Joshua was just a man like any other man. He wasn't no better, no worse than anybody else. But God said this work is going to take, they need to honor this. That's like the President of the United States, you know. We have to honor that office, that position. We may not like the dude that's in there sometimes, but we got to honor that position. And so, same way, he needed to be known. And it was very important that that take place. And in verse 8, "And thou shalt command the priests that bear the ark of the covenant, saying, When ye are come to the brink of the water of Jordan, ye shall stand still in Jordan." So now the priests have a job. Who was supposed to carry the ark? The Levites. Yep, the Levites were supposed to carry it. Levites are part of the priestly lineage, right? And so here, Joshua's doing it the right way. God told him, get the priest, take it, and when you get to the river, you stand still. Now remember, they're supposed to be how far away all times? Yeah. So they got to be away from it a good distance. How many people? We don't know. Remember, all the men aged, 20 and up in the wilderness all died, except Joshua and Caleb, but they've been there 40 years. A bunch of people being born, a bunch of people this. They didn't all die at one time. They died in different events. We don't know how many people crossed the Red Sea. I think probably close to 1 million maybe. We don't know. Again, just a guess. So how many is here now? Maybe another 1 million, 1.5 million, maybe more. We don't know. But we do know that it was more than 10. It was more than Joshua and these priests, okay? And sometimes, it's kind of like the Red Sea crossing and the Jordan crossing. We think, oh, man, it's like 3 foot wide, just like a little path. But it wasn't. Remember, they had to stay 2,000 cubits away from it. And they're going to pass while it stands still. That helps us, and I'm going to show it on the map here in a minute, how far we think the water had to be away. It's not just a little crossing. It wasn't just a little path. We picture that in our minds, but we got to see the magnitude of this. So it's much, 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 much bigger than what we ever could imagine. Verse 9. And Joshua said unto the children of Israel, Come hither and hear the words of the Lord your God. And Joshua said, Hereby ye shall know that the living God is among you, and that he will never fail. Drive out from before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, and the Jebusites. See, there was work for them to do. They were going to be doing something that God is leading them to do, which was not an easy thing. They've got to go in here and take this land. That was part of the cleansing. That was part of this, making sure Joshua is made known as leader, that God could have this understanding amongst the people. That this was not something, they wasn't going to go eat with them, okay? They were going there to take the land, to drive out the people, to drive them out. And part of that was going to be to kill these people. And so it was a very, very big job coming up. Very big. Very, very important. And I love how Joshua said, Ye shall know that the living God is among you. That's important for us today, that know that God is alive. And we don't serve some false idol. We don't serve some dead God somewhere or nothing. We don't make a pilgrimage once a year to go to a tomb. We serve a living Savior, a living God. In verse 11, it says, Behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of the earth passeth over before you into Jordan. Now therefore take you 12 men out of the 12 tribes of Israel, out of every tribe a man. Okay, we got a job for these folks too. These 12, mark out 12, and I'll tell you what they're going to do later. But go ahead and mark them now. Go ahead and get them prepared now, because they got a work to do too. And it shall come to pass, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests that bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, or just a little bit of the earth, just this part? No, he's God of all of it, right? Shall rest in the waters of Jordan, that the waters of Jordan shall be cut off from the waters that come down from above, and they shall stand upon an heap. Woo! This is going to be something. Let's keep reading. Again, there was people here that saw the Red Sea crossing, okay? And they're thinking in their mind, we can see this again. Man, what an awesome thing, right? to see this. Now, not to go what they had to go through to get there, but to see God work. What an awesome thing that would be. In verse 14, and it came to pass when the people removed from their tents to pass over Jordan, and the priests bearing the ark of the covenant before the people, and as they bare the ark were come into Jordan, and the feet of the priests that bare the ark were dipped in the brim of the water, for Jordan overflowed all its banks at the time of harvest. This time of year, the Jordan would have overflowed, okay? Now, how far did it overflow? Well, we don't know. All right, we know it was overflowing. We know it was big and wide to begin with. Because if it's overflowing its banks, guess what? That's as flat as all get out to begin with anyway. Little bitty hills and crevices in there, okay? And so there's a lot of water. Water's going to be spread out wide to begin with. And it is covering this area. Jordan overfloweth at this time. So as soon as the priests get to the edge, in verse 16, that the waters which came down from above, now that's not from the sky, okay, that's from the Sea of Galilee coming down, stood and rose up upon a heap very far from the city, Adam, that is beside Zaratan. All right, Regina, show that map. It'll be this Zarethan map. Okay. Here's Jericho down here. This is where they're going to cross. Right in this area, okay? This is where they are. But again, 1 million people, 2 million. We don't know how many people, more than 10. So there would have been people scattered all up through here, right? They can't be 1,000, 2,000 cubits from the ark. So if the ark, I think, the ark crossed where Jesus was baptized. I don't know that. Again, comes from the book of Jamie. And so if the ark is sitting right here, we got 2,000 cubits. There are going to be people just lined up over here and then lined up. They're not all in a line going to cross in one spot. There would be tribes all up through here. Here is Zarethan and Adam up here. $50 miles, 70 miles. Again, we don't know where those cities actually are, but this is kind of where we think they are. From here to here. That's how far the waters would have stood back. Now they could see it. But how big of a pile of water is going to get raised up if it goes all the way back to here? How high is the water going to be up in the air? And how does God control it? Because he's God. You see, we don't have this kind of definition on the Red Sea crossing. But in Scripture, we have a definition of how far the water was, how wide a distance they had to cross. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Those that came down toward the sea and the plain, even the salt sea, failed and were cut off, and the people passed over right against Jericho. Again, I think the ark was right there against Jericho, and all these people just crossed all around. It said it even went down all the way to the Dead Sea. Leads me also to believe that maybe the water was cut off. It drained all the way down to the Dead Sea after God stopped it all this far, and all this was open too. Makes sense, right? So they would have had all of this area to cross. It's just mind-boggling. You know, man can't do that. There's no way man could dam up anything like that to hold that water that far, that high, that fast, and do all of that for people to cross on dry ground. Verse 17. And the priests that bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of Jordan. So as soon as their feet touched it, that water started backing up. And that water that was there just went on down, drained out. And they stood on dry ground. There's no better translation available for those Hebrew words there than dry ground. Hard, packed, dry ground. And all the Israelites passed over on dry ground until all the people were passed clean over Jordan. Now that's just pretty amazing to me. See, we have this much more detail this time. This is not Elijah and Elisha crossing. We don't know how wide God made that one. But it wouldn't have had to be very wide. You know, he could have just stopped the water right there, boom, they went across. The Jordan River inside the banks is not that wide. Nature's river, you know. The spot where Jesus is baptized, it's not very wide, you know. But with it being out of its banks with no boundary, really, I mean, because it's flat. I mean, there's little hills and crevices and stuff like that, you know, but ultimately it's pretty flat across. So the water would have been, you know, way out to here, probably these gray areas maybe, I don't know. And it just, they got to see an awesome thing that God did. An awesome thing. And that event should have helped propel them into the work they've got to do to drive out the ites. Because that's their job. Now, really and truly, God said that he would drive them out, didn't he? God said, I'm going to go before you. God said, I'm going to do the work. All you have to do is show up. And we're going to see that when we get to Jericho. And God would have done that. All they would have had to do was show up and go. And later on, Joshua gets them all lined out and they start going. But then they don't. Then they stop. Then they quit. And then once the land gets divided up, it's kind of like us. We work for something, and once we get it, well, we got it. And that's what happened to a lot of the tribes. Once they got their allotment, because they'd been too long already, so God led Joshua to give them the land, go ahead and do the allotment, but part of that getting the land was they also had to continue on. But they quit. And that, brother, put it back to that other map, Regina, that Google map. All right, scroll it back out. Let me see all of Israel again. That's why we got this right here today. It's because they didn't push them out. See, if they got rid of the Philistines, guess what? This wouldn't even be on the map. That's why when we go here, see West Bank? That wouldn't be on the map either. Yep. Wouldn't have been there. Wouldn't have all these troubles. Wouldn't have all this up here. Wouldn't have all these war lines, 1948 line, and all these other lines, and all this kind of stuff. Wouldn't have had all that if they would have just did what God asked them to do. You see, there's consequences when we don't do what God asks us to do. There's always some kind of consequence, and part of it is what we live now. So, any comments, questions, anyone? Again, they went over Red Sea on dry ground. Same Hebrew word is used in both places. Karaba, same word. But it's interesting to see how they saw what God would do. They got to see an amazing thing. But it doesn't take long for them to kind of get away again. Any comments? Anybody else? Any questions? Again, the harvest time of year, just for a little clarity, it talks about that it overflowed in harvest, back up there in verse 15. Harvest time would have been around, it appears this time of the year was around the first month, or the month Nisan or Abib, which answers to our part of March and April, which was the month that Jesus would be crucified. Again, I don't think that's a coincidence either, that on the Passover, they would cross the Jordan at the same time that Jesus would be crucified as well. So God doesn't do anything coincidences, nothing by chance or accident. I believe God purposefully got them to this place at this time that they would do it at this time of year. So anyway, anybody else? in chapter 4, we'll get into what those 12 guys' job was that they've already set them aside for, so.